Jamaica's business community has suffered immensely from the effects of the fire that continues to blaze at the Riverton City landfill. Chief Executive Officer of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, PSOJ, Dennis Chung, reiterates the announcement by Capri earlier this week that the loss is valued at hundreds of millions of dollars.
There have been a loss of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue, particularly down in the Spanish Town Road area. One of the things that has also come to light is that even though the wharf was not closed, some of the ships were not able to come to port. At least one had to bypass with some goods. So it has affected us in terms of time delay, in terms of import and export also. That in turn would affect revenues. The other thing is that even though companies don't have the revenues coming in because of the loss of sales, they still have to pay their staff, they still have to incur costs, the startup costs that they shut down something and have to start it back up again. So it's significant sums. Capri has estimated that the losses of over $272 million in GDP. There are arguments that that amount could actually be conservative and that there are significant amounts more. Remember also that the health costs is also an issue. I mean, obviously, health insurance companies would have to pay out costs. Companies themselves might have to pay out costs on behalf of employees. So it's significant. It's running the hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of costs.
Mr. Chung says the loss incurred by the business community in the corporate area has already significantly impacted the country's gross domestic product, GDP. He additionally notes that the business community has met and strategized recommendations to prevent future losses at the expense of fire at the corporate area landfill.
The PSOJ had joined with civil society groups. One of them is that there's the immediate investigation and full accountability happen. But the other one is that there should be some collaboration between the private and public sector and civil society groups in terms of setting up an oversight committee, not dissimilar to the ESET, the electricity sector enterprise team, that will oversee the implementation of some security around the dump or any other recommendation that is most feasible. And that team should comprise of people with the requisite skills from all three sectors. So that essentially is the recommendations that were made.
Meanwhile, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, has issued a statement advising that major progress has been made to put out the blaze that has been ablaze for 10 days. ODPEM says the National Emergency Operations Center, NEOC, is optimistic that the Jamaica Fire Brigade will be able to meet the timeline of total extinguishing by Saturday, March 21, 2015. Meanwhile, opposition leader Andrew Holness is proposing that the government divest the Riverton City landfill. Mr. Holness says interested investors could develop the facility into a more environmentally friendly dump site. More in this report from Candice Ming.
The opposition has been extremely critical of the government's handling of the recent fire at the Riverton City landfill in St. Andrew. For Mr. Holness, the government was lackluster in its response to a major public health hazard. For 7 days, thick smoke blanketed the corporate area and sections of St. Catherine, sending scores of Jamaicans to seek medical assistance for respiratory-related illnesses. Schools were also affected, and several businesses close to the vicinity of the landfill had to shut their doors.
The smoke that has been hanging over Kingston for the past week could contain cancer-causing particles resulting from the burning of electronic gadgets and batteries, along with numerous other potentially dangerous but unregulated chemicals which have been disposed of at the dump.
It took several firefighters from Kingston and St. Catherine to quell the raging blaze. Arsonists have been blamed for the disaster, but Mr. Holness contends the government showed no urgency to contain the fire.
The public is angry at the nonchalance and casual nature of the government's response. There was no sense of urgency, no decisive action, no confidence-inspiring response, just as we saw with the chikungunya outbreak.
Meanwhile, the opposition leader believes the landfill should be divested. He says one of the main challenges affecting the management of the landfill is due to the fact that the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, which regulates the dump, also operates the facility.
Divest the dump to competent operators who are willing to make the necessary investments to create a green landfill. The dump sits on over 100 acres, has access to water, and is close to a port. These are further assets that can be leveraged in any divestment plan. As a properly managed landfill, apart from recycling, it should also have the prospect of being a waste-to-energy generator.
And the opposition leader says plans to privatize the landfill are in no attempt to ostracize Riverton City residents who depend on the site for a living.
But we have a duty to let the people in Riverton City know that privatization will not deprive them of an income. What it means is that an industry in waste disposal, recycling and energy generation could be established right in their backyard. This would give them meaningful and safer employment and better prospects for their children. It would also mean the improvement of infrastructure and a much better living environment.
Meanwhile, he's also recommending that fire retardants be used to contain future fires.
Have airdrops of fire retardants that you could go and contract with a plane that carries the fire retardant, flies over the dump and drops the fire retardant. That would give the firefighters a better chance of bringing the fire under control in a much quicker time period. And I would recommend to the government that they go through the JDF or the fire brigade and explore this possibility of having a relationship, a standby arrangement.
Candice Ming for CEEN Caribbean News.